Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, however, wherever, whenever you're listening. This is the Root for Wisconsin show, episode 167. We're coming at you from the Riverwood Gallery studio in De Pere, Wisconsin. I'm host and producer Eric Fisher, the Big E. Joining me this evening, we've got Dylan Schritt. Dylan, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Also joining us, and we're going to get straight into business, is owner and promoter of Ragin Pro Wrestling. You know him as Ragin Rich. He's been on the show before. Rich Buchholz. Rich, how are you doing? Welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Love to hear that. Doing great myself. Can not wait as we have plenty to talk about. And Rich, like I said, usually this is the part of the show where we're promoting the next show for you or with you, but you're here to talk about it. So we've got RPW coming up, RPW Homecoming 3 coming up, not this Saturday, not for Memorial Day weekend, but the following Saturday in Wapaka, May 31st. And this is a loaded card.
It is a loaded card. There's two steel cage matches. The first one will be a women's steel cage match for the RPW Women's Championship. Casey Lennox will be defending against Stacy Shadows. And then the main event will be former tag team champions, now bitter enemies at RPW, Nick Colucci and Salem Crane.
And really, let's start with the cages and kind of going through the old school wrestling of the logic of a cage is to prevent any sort of interference in or out. What led to these two matches building up to this point, needing to have a cage to contain the action?
So Nick Colucci has been attacked by Salem Crane a couple times. So we want to make sure that there's no interference. And we are doing old school logic where you got to escape the cage. There's no referee in the ring. And then Casey Lennox has cheated twice to retain her title. This time there will be no cheating because there's no DQs. She's got to escape the cage to retain her title.
So I'll ask you this, and we'll go behind the curtain just a little bit here. What goes into kind of getting the ring ready for a cage match as opposed to just a normal show?
So the cage has to be built. We're not WWE money or AEW money. So like those cages are put together beforehand and they just come down from the rafters. Ours, you have to sit there and build them. So there will probably be like a 15-20 minute break in between the last match before the cage and two cage matches. And that's why we are ending the show with the two cage matches also. Because I know that that's been a question on some people's minds of why you not having the world title match be the main event. I don't want to have three intermissions.
Right. That makes sense. That's logical. All right. What else we have on the card here for Homecoming 3, Rich?
You'll have Isaiah Moore defending his Cruiserweight Championship against Johnny CK and Miguel Money. You'll have Rick McCarthy defending his RPW Heavyweight Championship against Silas Young. You'll have an intergender match of Shelly Benson versus Jordan Cross. You'll have Ryan Cross versus Ethan Matthews. You'll have Royal Flava versus Jens D for the RPW Tag Team Championships. Gen Z has been the champion since November. And I think that's all the matches. Parker Bourgeois will also be there from AEW. He will be facing Ezio Orlandi, who's pretty famous in Chicago.
That's awesome. And I know for sure as of, it stands right now, and as I'm sure you know, in the world of independent wrestling, there's always cancellations and schedule changes and everything with that. But as of right now, it looks like we will have at least three people there on our behalf. So we cannot wait to
Nice.
be at the next RPW show. And Rich, if you want to talk about that just a little bit of what goes into scheduling an event with talent, and I guess when there are cancellations, and the big one right now is Zilla Fatu, the son of WWE superstar Umaga. late superstar Umaga, who had announced, it looks like yesterday, that he was not able to make RPW Homecoming 3.
Yep.
What kind of goes into, like I said, the scheduling, and then having to switch gears so quickly?
We pretty much are right on top of stuff. Like I got the news yesterday from his agent at 1:30. We had it on social media by 7:30. So like when I get the news, I try and get it done as quick as possible to be the first source so that other people don't hear from somebody else and then are questioning me about it. So like we let JDX know before we put it out there. JDX didn't respond to me till a little bit after, but we did tell him first. Then we did tell some of our fans that I knew were coming just to see Zilla. Um, Please let me assure you that we had nothing to do with it. His flight, his hotel, and his booking fee were all covered going into it. It was something on his end. Like he may come out later and say what the circumstance was. That's not really our job to say that.
Sure. Dylan,
Yes, sir.
anything to ask here already?
Yeah, no, I'm just taking it in. I don't. This is the first time I've had background, behind the scenes stuff for an event like this. So I'm just trying to absorb and retain everything I can here because it's interesting. I enjoy hearing about it. So
So,
I do.
Rich, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I do everything very methodical as far as we prepay anyone that wants to be prepaid. Their hotels, their airfare is all covered before we even announce them generally. It's just a matter of it's comfort on their end. So like when we have people cancel, it's usually TV obligations or another show comes up that's closer to them or whatever the case may be. It's never based on we're not paying them or anything like that.
So, just kind of going into that question, and allowing you to kind of promote your business, because you really have, I'll say it, one of the premier independent wrestling promotions in the area.
Yeah.
You have so much talent that's out there with these TV tapings. Is that a challenge that you have to face regularly with having prevalent talent? I mean, you've had, Silas Young is on this card coming up, where he's been on Ring of Honor and a number of other shows. Parker Bordeaux, also AWWE, AEW star. And I could go on and on. These different guys and gals who've had TV time and are kind of on the fringe of that TV time. Looking at the announcement you made last week with Elena Black, formerly known as Cora Jade at WWE. Ken Anderson, who just he had a massive podcast appearance. I wanted to ask you about that in a little bit, but big podcast appearance for him that came out this week. So to kind of you bring in this top tier talent to the area.
Yep.
Um, you know, I guess kind of brag about yourself here. Like what kind of goes into that, and having these people who, you know, you kind of put yourself in that position where it could be because there is so many TV tapings, but you're getting the best pro wrestling in the area.
For me personally, it's gonna sound that way. It's one of those where I worry about sporting events and I worry about events in the area where some promotions will look at who's running that day. I don't worry about that. Like I worry about like Oktoberfest for the September show. I worry about for the May show, I worry about the summer coming up. Like you got to make sure that everything aligns. So like we plug stuff very methodically and make sure that we're not gonna get destroyed by a different event in the area. So the Brewers do play a factor in it if they're home or away sometimes. I do look at that. I do look at the Packers if I can, as far as scheduling ahead of time. As far as talent goes, we reach out to talent probably 8 to 10 months ahead of time. Some will take it, some will not. We've had we've had talent say it's too far out. We've had talent that will reach back out a month before the show and wonder if they can get on. 99% of the time, I'll tell them no. It's just a matter of situations. like when Elena Black became available, we made an exception to adding to that card because I kind of have the feeling she's going to be Chelsea Green. And if you look at her calendar, it's very similar. She's getting her name out there and she's establishing herself on the independent scene.
Yeah, and to kind of go, and that kind of leads me to my next, where I was kind of going to go with this as well, is when you look at Elena Black and the TV prevalence. I mean, it wasn't like she was, kind of. I don't want to diminish any of these talents out there, but it wasn't like she was, kind of on the back burner of WWE. I mean, she was a very prevalent performer in NXT for the time that
Well,
she was there. Some big storylines along the way, some big time matches along the way. And, going back to the first show Ramsey and I went to was the Chelsea Green, Deonna Purrazzo, who in both their own rights are absolutely killing it in major promotions right now. You know, I guess, like I said, just kind of brag about your company and yourself of bringing that talent in.
we've had over, before the show, we've had over 130 wrestlers that have worked for us, 4 different countries that we've had talent from. Anyone we've flown in was from the United States, but some of those people were here because of other places, and then we brought them in. But it's one of those things where we have a lot of people that reach out to us. We have followers throughout the world, just from social media platforms. There's people that try and steal my content constantly, so I get copyright infringement, which is extremely annoying. 'Cause I'll be at work and all of a sudden I'll see it. And I'm like, what did I do? I didn't do anything, but it's somebody trying to steal our feed. So
Speaking of talent, I genuinely don't know the answer to this question. So, what is your process for getting talent? Like, do you have a vetting process? Do they more of the times do they come to you? Are you reaching out to them? How does that work exactly?
it depends on the talent. So like TV talent, I will usually reach out to them. If it's local talent, a lot of them reach out to me. Like we have our name out there enough where like I've talked to Joe Hendry, who is actually very famous. Um, we couldn't come to a deal at the time, but like he responds very quickly to social media. Like I wrote to him and asked him his calendar. This was last year, and he got back to me in 10 minutes. So he checked this Instagram very frequently.
So basically, what you're saying is, if you say his name into your phone, he will appear.
He will tell you not to do it.
That's awesome. No, that's really cool. And kind of going with that as well. I mean, like, just kind of following up on that. Is there a talent that hasn't been booked yet, that kind of your dream talent to try to book? And if we can do anything to make that happen, let's make it happen here.
Dream talent the book. I would.
Like if we're talking about this next year, we'll give you, a year of RPW yet.
Yep.
What's that dream talent that in the next year that you would love to have come through? Or even I'll even give you next year and a half, because I know you said 8 to 10 months you're kind of looking out.
Yeah.
So kind of giving you some window to work yourself here too.
A dream match I'd love to have to run it back if we want Appleton to be very successful. A dream match that I want is I want to have Jack Swagger versus Joey Avalon in Appleton. And the full circle moment for that would be Joey Avalon wrestled him in his hometown. Joey Avalon's from Appleton. We did try to make that happen this year. It wasn't able to happen, but we did try to make it happen. But it's definitely something on my list.
Any others?
Off the top of my head, it's very hard to say because I don't know like top tier people that aren't signed.
Sure.
We would have loved to have Jacob Fatu. He's becoming a huge star in WWE. But we were very close to getting Roxanne Perez before she got signed. We were probably a couple weeks away from it, and she couldn't come back. So there's a lot of wrestlers that have reached out that we had to say no to it, which is tough. Leo Rush reached out to me. I didn't know who he was. Like he reached out to me under his real name,
Sure.
and then I looked and I'm like, Leo Rush. That's kind of interesting that he reached. This is like our first year in.
Sure.
He reached out to me trying to get booked, and I'm like, we're full that day, sorry. And then I looked, I'm like, that's interesting. And like generally speaking, if they live on the West Coast, we fly them in on Friday because of the traffic control issues of trying to get them in on the same day.
Right. No, that makes sense. I had mentioned it, moments ago, and I'll kind of tease it here too. So obviously, first of all, finish listening to this podcast first. Don't go listen to somebody else's first. But uh, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Anderson, the Pride of Two Rivers, Wisconsin, billed from Green Bay in his WWE time because it's
Yep.
basically the same thing, all things considered. But
Yeah.
just had a big appearance on the Chris Van Vliet show.
Yep.
And his, one of my buddies, Sean, had texted me about it. I'd seen it on TikTok. I guess first I'll lead off with: have you seen the interview yet?
I have not seen the interview yet. I've seen clips of it, just like stuff that he wrote that they wrote out, or that he said that they wrote out, but I've not seen the actual interview.
So I'll just be candid. I haven't seen the full thing yet. I meant to, and they got a little away from me. But um, I'll kind of start with asking just about him. You've started kind of having him on shows. Goes back, is that going back a year and change ago?
Yep. March of last year. Yep.
What is it having him, not diminishing any of these other talents, Silas Young, probably the most comparable in this conversation, but
Yep.
having somebody who had such a prevalent WWE TV time and having them come back home for these shows.
It's huge to help people in the future of, hey, this person was local. If you put the work in, it could end up benefiting you. Where a lot of people just see nostalgia of this could never happen to me type thing. And Ken, Silas Young, Swoggle, they're all successes that are from 30 to 60 miles away from here.
So in that interview, I guess, the one thing I really want to ask you, and I know this is something you've talked about before, and I think it's a great platform for this, and this is why, why I believe in this product so much, is that your frame of mind is always about getting people back either to TV or to the next big gig.
Yep.
It happened in this, perfect tie in here as well with you had mentioned with Elena Black / Cora Jade and Chelsea Green, a couple years back. But Ken had said in his interview that he initially never thought he'd want to go back to WWE, and now he says he'd be open to it. I guess first, do you put, do you consider like a fraction of that being part of, the RPW, having the fans coming in and the nostalgia that goes with that and having those shows? And then second part of that as well is, what would it mean to you to be kind of, to kind of be part of that if, if he ends up going back to TV, where you were, I'll say you were a very notable part of that journey back for him, especially in this area as of late.
It would be amazing. Like the one thing that's nice is that a lot of these talents actually will message me directly. Like Ken and I talk. It's 5 years ago, I would have dreamed of having what I have. Now it's like you're kind of amazed that these people just randomly will hit you up. Like Ken will message me and be like, "Hey, Cal Bloom just got released. Hit me up if you want his info or whatever." Just random stuff like that. Cal Bloom would be Von Wagner if you didn't know who I was talking about from NXT. Um, but yeah, I mean, Ken's trained so many great talents in Minneapolis. That's why we are plugging the academy a lot. Like anything I plug, I'm doing it on my own. I'm not getting paid to do it. I truthfully believe in the academy a lot. We have a lot of people that work that were trained under Seth Rollins, the Black and Brave Academy. They are really good. We get hit up from so many different places that it's hard to balance where and when to bring in people. So to kind of answer that question would be, we'd love to see Ken go back, and we'd love to see all of our talent try to get to TV. That's my goal. Storylines are great. At the end of the day, being local, we realize that we we don't think of ourselves as Wisconsin Timberwhalers, but at the same sense, Timberwhalers don't want to be Timberwhalers forever. They want to become Brewers. We want our talent to become WWE, AEW, Impact stars. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it, because I think, you know, when you kind of start going through the independent scene, you do get a lot of people who kind of, you know, they really do have it, you know, that they should treat that as their main event for the night, and that, you know, they're not necessarily doing that to help platform these wrestlers and their craft. And one thing I think is really cool about RPW is you do get like the younger talent. Like you look at a Jordan Cross, for example,
Yep.
who's kind of rising up, and Money Miguel and guys to that end. But you also, like, you know, you have a very good balance of everyone in between, where it's guys like Silas Young or Swaggle or Ken Anderson as well. Um, you know, you really do have something. I would say, truthfully, something for everybody.
We try to. I mean, you're never going to please everybody 100%, but we don't just focus on one narrative. Everybody's got their own thing that they love. One thing that we brought in that most people originally were like, that's dumb, was we focused on women's wrestling. And now a lot of people are copying it, and I'm flattered by that. If we come up with an idea that works for us and it works for somebody else, phenomenal. I mean, we got our idea from Shimmer, which was southern of us, but like Wisconsin, if you had one women's match, that was very few and far between. Now, like we have 2 to 3 a show generally.
So you have, you know, just looking at match types and kind of going with that, you have the cage matches coming up. Is there a stipulation, or, you know, you've had the elimination matches, you've had quite a few, you know, obviously you've had the no DQs, you've had a number of different things. Is there any stipulation coming up that you really want to try that you haven't yet?
A dream one would be a ladder match. It's a matter of the insurance issue. I think of legalities more than I think of anything else. I will not try a ladder match at the Appleton one. We have enough insurance that we had to cover. I don't want to risk any of that. Um, if it's doable, I would do it. It just depends on when and where.
So I guess, you don't have to spill every secret, but kind of what goes into that. You know, these wrestlers. I mean, they are independent contractors.
Yep.
Um, so you kind of get into that aspect of it with the different insurances, and you know, you get some. You know, it's unfortunately it's part of the business. You look at, even at the WWE level, Zoe Stark last week.
Yep.
You know, the very notable one that I think was a fundraiser last show, the Alley Catch injury. You know, as much as you can or want to, what kind of goes into that side of match booking as well?
As far as the insurance, or as far as what?
Just insurance, well being, and match stipulations, things like that.
So for me, like I'd rather have people wrestle each other that have wrestled each other before. That way there's chemistry in the ring. Um, I don't like wrestlers not knowing each other. That kind of freaks me out because you're not going to be able to know each other's tendencies in 5 minutes. It's just not realistic. Where we're very focused on certain companies that I'll watch and see what they're doing, and if it works, if it's a solid match, there's times where I will use the same match after they do it. We brand ourselves a lot on AAW. out of Illinois and Dreamwave. Um, they do a phenomenal job. So that's the kind of stuff I look at
And
to name a few.
then go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's to name a few. Like a lot of our top tier talent is from Illinois and Minneapolis that aren't real local.
So then just kind of going ahead here, looking back at this card and coming up, the RPW plushie that, the last show, as I had mentioned, did go to the part of the proceeds went to Alley Catch. Is there
Yep.
anything coming up at this show and in future shows? What's new with RPW going forward?
Pretty much going forward, every show we just want to bring as many fans to our shows, and we want to get new fans that get to experience it. The sky's the limit on who we bring in. I don't have anyone secretive at the moment. Usually we push it very quickly because I'd rather have the ticket sales than have the surprise factor. Um, Very rarely do people cancel. It does happen. I feel bad about that, but there's not much I can do. Um, the shows in November, we have a tournament, which is going to be the first time ever in RPW history. So that'll be good to experience. They'll be getting a trophy, kind of like a Stanley Cup small version. So
All right, Rich, and then just finishing this off here, uh, just kind of as a whole, you want to plug the show one more time, and where can people get tickets, merch, etc.?
so you can get tickets on rpwprowrestling.com. Tickets are $10 in advance, 20 at the door for Wapaka. And there's for the Appleton show, there's still 6 third row seats left for $15. Get them while they last. They will not last until show day, I guarantee it. They'll be lucky to last until probably Monday.
All right. Well, that's Rich. Rich, anything else you want to add about the RPW as a whole? Any talent? Anything else?
I think I'm good.
All right. Well, that's Rich Buchholz, Ragin Rich, joining us this evening. And if you're not busy, you're going to want to be at RPW Homecoming 3 in Wapaka, not this Saturday, next Saturday, May 31st. Rich, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Once again, thank you to Rich for joining us this evening. Now, Dylan, let's get into the last month or so of sports and Wisconsin news, everything kind of going on in the last month. First of all, again, how are you doing, man? It's been a month since we've gotten to do this, and eventually, we went from having about a 4 month gap, we're down to 1 month. So I think eventually we'll work this out.
We're getting there. We're getting better.
All right. So, like I said, um, we'll start off with, aside from talking RPW, because we just did that, we'll start with talking about what we had rooted for in the last month. And Dylan, take it away, because I've talked for a while.
Yeah, it's been a bit. Where did we even leave off?
It
You
was
always,
just before the draft.
yeah. Um, you and I have talked. We're pretty happy with the draft. I'm sure we'll get into that here in a minute, so I won't get too detailed into that now. Geez, a month ago, I can't even remember if the Bucks were still playing. Um, they probably were,
If
but
they weren't, it was just fresh.
yeah. So just for the sake of this, we'll assume that they were still playing. But you know, disappointed, disappointed, but given the circumstances, expected. Um, but we'll get into that as well, I assume. Trying my best to pay attention to more of the Brewers this year.
You picked a bad year for that to happen.
You know what? Sometimes you just don't have the luck.
That's honestly a lot of what this comes down to, I feel. And we'll talk about that a little more later as well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so any particular positives in the last month?
No, nothing positive. Everything's been bad. No. It we've had, the ending of the Bucks season was, what a lot of Wisconsin sports fans will call a typical end to the sports season. Um, High expectations, low end results. I think there's optimism in place for the Packers. Um, we have the schedule. I'm sure we'll touch on that in a little bit too. So, I mean, it's going to be an exciting start to the season. Um, Trying my best to keep hopes up for the Brewers, but they are not giving us much of a reason to at the moment. But you know what? Can't be fair weather fans. So, it could be worse. We could be like Cleveland sports fans. So,
Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, and this one kind of a little on the back burner given the current status, but the most unlucky sports fans that this just came out today that have not had a I believe that their city is in the longest championship drought is Minnesota or
well,
Minneapolis. They have not had a championship game or a championship appearance going back to 1991.
that's tough.
They are
But
currently the most snake bitten sports city. I believe that encompasses the big four, but really the big
hmm
three, because the Wild haven't done it either.
well,
But
I don't feel bad for him.
I really don't either. I quite frankly find it really funny, if I'm being honest. So, we can't even look at Cleveland because at least they got there with LeBron. They won the one with LeBron.
True,
Um,
very true.
they've had a lot of other bad luck, especially their football team, but they got one in 2016. So the most snake bitten franchise currently stands with the city of Minneapolis.
Boo-hoo. I'll be sure to cry for them before bed tonight.
All right. So my root for I gotta say the draft in Green Bay was a what I'm assuming is going to be a once in a lifetime opportunity. It was so cool to have that here. I worked a lot that week, 21 hours as a part time employee for 3 days.
It's a lot.
That is a lot, and that's just what I put down. But yeah, no, it was so well done by the city of Green Bay. I cannot find a gripe against it. The only negative, even in that's conversation worthy, applied to so few people that it's almost not worth mentioning. But because I teased it so much, I'm going to.
Yeah, you can't leave me hanging now.
Um, was how the media side of it was in terms of access, specifically the local media. I think kind of got a little bit of a raw deal in the sense of you go to work this and again, so grateful for the opportunity to even be able to complain about this. So many
hmm
so many dreams are on getting that NFL credential and all that stuff. So that was really cool. You're rubbing shoulders and brushing shoulders quite literally with some of the top media folks in the world when you're in the media work area. Um, like I said, the only complaint though is just how it kind of broke down to where we had to park. The NFL gave local media a parking pass because everyone else was shuttling in.
hmm
And where we parked was, if you're familiar with the layout of the Green Bay Stadium area, like by the Titletown Apartments, behind like not even to the
Yeah.
Titletown Football District, like where the field and like the sledding hill are.
hmm
Small marginal walk from there, very much in the same area, but so picture that. To get our credential on the first day, you had to go. all the way around the whole draft theater, go around Lambeau the back way,
Hmm.
and across or down a block yet, to like McCarthy Ave, and then across like where the Packers practice field is. Now again, it's a very small potatoes gripe that impacted probably maybe 100 people. So aside from that, though, everything else, again, like I said, was so positive. Getting in and out of traffic, getting on the highway. I was Friday night because the other guys, the gripe was when you hear Radio Row, usually like for like when they have Super Bowl Radio Row week, like you're in the middle of everything.
Hmm.
Um, for the draft, and I don't know if this was just a Green Bay thing or if it's just kind of the logistics of how the draft process works. Where Media Row and Radio Row for the draft, people covering it, and our station included, was in the Rush Expo Center, which again is fine in the grand scheme. Like it's not too much of an issue, but you're very removed from everything, and there wasn't an easy way to get like crowd noise or crowd reaction to picks because to get in and out, you had to go out the side door and then basically around or you cross Oneida by going like around the Johnsonville tailgate village to get back to
Hmm.
the draft theater area. So it was very out of the way. There wasn't like a direct linking thing. So we're doing our live broadcast on Thursday night and getting these reaction to picks, and the only audio or only like reaction you're getting is through like the 4 TV screens that are in the Rush Expo where Radio Row was. So I think that could have maybe been a little bit better. Again, I'm nitpicking at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it was kind of last minute that was the way that they kind of went about it. Like they didn't really let everybody know. So plans were being made for for show scheduling purposes. Plans were made, you know, a couple weeks in advance when you're starting to kind of get a feeling for what it might be, and then you have to end up changing everything.
Hmm.
It ended up working out for me where I got to go down on site 2 days instead of just the one that I was supposed to. So I was very happy about it and fortunate about it. But like I said, just it was a little inconvenient, I guess. But aside from that, you know, credit to Green Bay Police for how they routed traffic in and out. I was really worried about getting back home in a timely fashion, and I think it took 3 minutes to get back on the highway
Yeah, that's not bad at
of
all.
how they routed it, kind of around Cabela's and back to the highway the long way around. So it was so well done. Crowds were great. I think there was only one arrest
I think I
over the
saw
three
that too. Yeah.
days. Um, so I don't think they've finally calculated in like the economic impact. I think some of the local businesses were a little underwhelmed by it,
Hmm.
and disappointed, but I think that's also kind of on them for not really thinking about how the draft goer was going to partake.
Right.
That's a different conversation to have. So all in all, like I said, it was a once in a lifetime experience that I'm glad I got to do, but I'm also glad that next year it's a TV show again.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's I mean, and I knew this. There's a lot of standing around, and when you're doing that on concrete for the better part of 15, 16 hours, gets a little
Hmm.
old. you
Yeah.
know,
I hear you.
um,
I hear you.
that
Dogs are probably barking, huh?
dogs were barking bad. Like that was by Saturday afternoon. Like it was my feet up, just all the way up, and again, such a narrow complaint. Um, but yeah, it was very very fun. Um, I didn't really realize on how like when you're watching on TV, they do a lot of the picks, like in commercial breaks in those later rounds. They didn't
Hmm.
do that. I mean, they announced every single pick with somebody announcing it on the stage. And I thought that was odd. I don't know if that's relatively new or if it's just because, they don't show every one of those on TV,
Mm-hmm.
which, quite frankly, I'm fine with. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. But yeah, glad for it to be back on TV where I can sit at home, drink a beer for free, or my initial $15 for a
Retail
case of
cost.
beer,
Yeah.
as opposed to $15 for a beer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. With the positives do come the negatives, and that leads us to our Tyler Hero. I guess we have to call it Noogie of the Month, but our Tyler Hero
Yeah.
Noogie of the
Noogies
Week,
of the month.
which I have a lot loaded up here. The last week has really provided a lot of the fuel here.
It really has, and I know we're on the same page about one thing, and let's just jump right into it. Because we could talk about this for the remainder of the show if we wanted to, and that is going to be the WNBA.
Yes. Actually, damn it, I wish I would have asked Rich about how he would book this. How would you book Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese?
I think you could literally just book it, print it. You could half-ass promote it, and it would be the most watched TV show, whatever you want to call it, in decades. I cannot believe how vested people are in on this and how much traction it has
Okay.
for how
I
little of a rivalry it actually is.
it's
How
such a
how
it's a one-sided rivalry.
it is. It
And
is.
that's
And
what drives me nuts about this whole thing. And you know, let's rehash it for a second here for the people who don't, may not keep up with the WNBA because the ratings would generally show that that's the majority of people.
mhm,
These two women were in college at the same time. They played in college a few times, I believe, where they faced off. Most notably, was that a national championship game that they played? The big
no,
one?
that was
That was
Final
a Final
Four. That was
Four.
Final Four
Yes.
game.
Final Four game, Iowa versus LSU.
No,
And
no, I'm sorry. It was a national championship game.
yeah, that's what I thought.
Yes, it was a national championship game, which technically is a Final Four game. But yes, it was the
Yes.
national championship.
Iowa, LSU, and two very prominent players, Caitlin Clark for Iowa, Angel Reese for LSU. They both come out of the draft at the same time, so they're both rookies last year.
Hmm.
Angel Reese with a bone to pick with, everyone, they call it the Caitlin Clark effect. So, a lot of eyes now on the WNBA, in large part due to Caitlin Clark.
Hmm.
Um, Angel Reese, not too thrilled about that. Angel Reese says, well, it's more than just her, it's me. And I mean, we've talked about the the old heads of the WNBA getting real pissed off at Caitlin Clark, but Angel Reese kind of
Hmm.
had the same conversation where she's like, yeah, like, hey, like I play basketball too.
Hmm.
Um, for the most part, and I mean, the WNBA as a whole, the noogie goes to the WNBA
Yeah.
because they cannot get out of their own way. So they play very contentious games last year. Caitlin Clark gets the absolute hell beaten out of her a lot,
Hmm.
and
Still is. Still
still
is.
is. Um, the commentary on social media, so many different things, but the most conversational to this part. So WNBA regular season tipped off on Saturday last week, maybe Friday. Either way, this last weekend, and those two played in the opening game. Uh, the Indiana Fever, Caitlin Clark's team, beat the shit out of the Chicago Sky. It was like a 30-plus point drubbing.
Yes.
But Caitlin Clark made a basketball play on Angel Reese, who is notorious for missing bunnies. Got her real good on a hack across the arm. Angel Reese lost her shit. And then, all the rah rah stuff broke out. And then on top of it, you have these allegations of racism that to this point, as of recording, are largely unfounded. That Chicago didn't even know it was happening allegedly
Mm-hmm.
happening until after the game. And the reason for that is largely because they didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
As it stands right now, they didn't happen.
Well,
They were from social media accounts that were not at the game that were saying this is going on at the game.
mm-hmm. Well, I want to add something to that to the basketball play, right? Did you see what happened before Caitlin Clark hacked her?
There was a push. She pushed her teammate, or not.
Angel Reese was getting boxed out. She two-hand pushed the Fever player away, like two-hand, like just a shove, just a blatant shove. So as Angel Reese is going up for the rebound, Caitlin Clark's pointing at her, looking at the ref, like, "What was that?" And then as Reese goes up for the rebound, Caitlin Clark got her across both arms. Foul, absolutely a foul. She did it on purpose. I think it was
Yeah,
well
go earn it.
deserved. I was well deserved the flagrant one because she wasn't going for the ball. I believe she got a flagrant one, did she not?
I don't think she did. Maybe
I
she
thought
did.
she. I
She
think
might
she
have.
got a flagrant.
I'll be honest. I didn't see it in real time. Um,
I think she got a flagrant one.
if
Earned
she
it.
did,
She earned it.
if she did, she earned it. If she didn't, again, it's a very basketball-esque play where
Yes. Yep.
you're going to make a weak shooter earn it at the free throw line. Kind of the hack a
Right.
Shaq method.
Right. Um.
Yes, she did get a flagrant because then she missed the flagrant foul. That's right.
Yes. Yes, she did. Um. Now we are basically we're watching the rise of who will more than likely end up being the greatest player in WNBA history. That's my I think it's pretty safe to say that. I think she's going to get there. Um, and we're just watching her get torn down by the media, and it's ridiculous.
And the WNBA. Like
Yeah.
that's the part that drives me insane about this all is the WNBA, like I said, they can't get out of their own way.
No,
They
they're
just they want to knock her down at every single area
mm-hmm.
because, you have these old heads who are, Cheryl Swoops is probably the most prevalent of, well, there was other players before her, there'll be other players after her. Yeah, sure. There was tons of people before Michael Jordan. There was tons of people before LeBron. You know,
There's tons of players before Magic Johnson and Larry Bird saved the NBA.
right? Absolutely. But when you look at the NBA, and I mean they're subsidized in the WNBA, but when you look at the NBA, to the NBA's credit, they have done such a great job marketing their stars. We were
Yes.
having a conversation a couple weeks ago about the NBA. When we were growing up, Dylan, as Bucks fans, it was hard to watch the NBA at the time. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
after the Bucks trade Mike Ray Allen, there was a window in there where they were downright terrible.
Yes.
And as a whole, the Central was terrible. I mean, LeBron gets drafted in 03. I would argue probably doesn't really hit his stride until maybe 05, 06 at the kind of the earliest where he's really, best in the world type shit and starting that.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Rich just I texted him to ask him how he would book it. He said Angel Reese goes over by grabbing the rope. That's awesome. Cheating.
Mm-hmm.
That's funny. Anyway, but I mean, yeah, the Pistons, I guess, were good. Reggie Miller was at the tail end of his career, but the Bucks weren't even competitive in those fun, Bucks Pistons games. They were getting their ass whooped,
Mm-hmm.
and they were losing games like I don't even know a final score, but it was like 101 to 78. And Michael Wright had a couple good years in there, but it was so bad. And really, aside, kind of in that area, aside of Kobe, eventually you get, Wade, Anthony, and LeBron, but it was Kobe, Iverson, and Shaq really that was really holding the NBA up. And the Spurs, I guess they were always kind of good, but
Mm-hmm. They were.
you
Yep.
really didn't have superstars everywhere. Where now there's legitimate superstars on every single team, minus maybe Houston.
Yeah, they have some young talent. They really do have
They
some young
do.
talent.
No, that's how we were talking about this. Where, that was the night of the Houston Denver game 7, where we were talking
Hmm.
about this, and I said to my brother-in-law and his brother-in-law on the other side, I'm like, I don't know if I could name a single Houston Rockets player right now. The most notable is probably Fred VanVleet.
Maybe Jalen Green.
Yeah. So to that point, though, like I said, the NBA has made such a good job with their superstars, marketing their superstars, big market, small market, whatever. I mean, look at the rise of Giannis, who, by the
Hmm.
way, did say today doesn't want a trade, or he's not requesting a trade at this time. So some big NBA news there.
Hmm.
Um, but regardless, they've done such a terrible job of just trying to bury Caitlin Clark at every turn that they just refuse to embrace this new wave of her and to that credit, Angel Reese, Paige Beckers, Cameron Brink. There are some legitimate superstars budding if they would just market them better.
Yes, and they need to, if they want to if they want to make rivalries, that's great. Like that would be fantastic for the WNBA. Give some, I don't want to like turn it into a reality TV show, but give some drama to the games. But don't ultimately resort to, oh, it's racism.
Well, and I mean, there was the whole battle between RG3 and Ryan Clark that was, all racism, whatever, with
Hmm.
RG3's wife or whatever. Um, our beloved Midwest, I can't even call him that. Do you remember the guy, the journalist who got kicked out of covering the Indiana Fever for a year? The Greg Doyle, the guy who did the heart at Caitlin Clark's introductory press conference. Like that was a big
Yeah.
story.
Yep.
Um, in his first piece of getting to cover the team, he wrote about how Indiana fans who are being racist aren't actually WNBA fans, which, like, the premise of what he's saying is true. But like the grandstanding and ass kissing of like teetering a very fine line of trying to kiss Caitlin Clark's ass without being creepy.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
is it is such a fine line for him to walk, and he does it very, very terribly just throughout the whole. It's an opinion piece, so it's his opinion, but yeah, the whole thing is just bad. Um, Again, partially the source is to blame there, but yeah, it's hard to take him seriously where he's like, and Caitlin Clark, she doesn't, she's trying to combat all this, blah 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 blah. It's like, dude, stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
We
that's
we
that. We could go on this for a while. That was my
yeah.
one really big noogie. My other noogie goes with something actually also this week, and that's specifically being the Brett Favre documentary. And
Hmm.
I will say, so it's on Netflix. It's Untold, Untold stories, the Fall of Favre. Um, and maybe I'm just more hyper aware because we live in Wisconsin and Brett Favre is still front page news anytime he does anything. Um, but like in the advertising for the lead up to this documentary, a lot of the focus was on, oh, you're gonna see Brett Favre in a whole new light and blah 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 on that. And I watched this. It was like an hour and change long. My opinion, like there wasn't anything new in it. Like we know Brett Favre's a scumbag. We know he cheat on his wife actively a
Hmm.
lot.
Yeah.
Um, we know he was sending wiener pics to Jen Sturger. And we know he had some sort of potential alleged, because he's still suing people, alleged involvement in the misappropriation of welfare funds from the state of Mississippi.
Hmm.
Um, you know what you choose to believe of his knowledge of that situation to this point, and even the documentary trying to, I don't want to say smear him, because this is all pretty known shit. But the documentary taking the light that they did, they really couldn't. They had screenshots and stuff on phones, and they really didn't show anything that really, even in that scandal, shows that hey, he was like the mastermind behind this.
Hmm.
If you're helping out for a cause and for a university and you're getting paid by the university and the state as a whole, I don't think you're really questioning it too much. So I'm, for now, willing to kind of take, his side that maybe he truthfully didn't know, because I think
Hmm.
there was enough people out there that would have tried to throw the book at him if he did. Um, so to say all that though, I think my noogie really kind of goes to them trying to condense it into 1 hour long documentary.
Hmm.
Whereas if they really wanted to tell the story, I think they were trying to, they would have made it multiple episodes. They would have kind of went deeper in on, they very, very briefly mentioned the substance abuse, which was in a very prevalent part of his pre Super Bowl season in Green Bay, where he missed time with a Vicodin issue in like the off-season programs. And
Hmm.
what did that have to do? And we had talked about this yesterday, Dylan, where you're talking about a guy who, you don't excuse any of the bad stuff. It's really, actions beget the necessary consequences. But you really could have dug into what the substance abuse did in his behavior, and him losing
Hmm.
his dad, and then on top of it, all the hits and trying to play through every injury, trying to be the tough guy. And on top of that, then also you're looking at playing, I don't know, probably 95% of your career in a city where you kind of get away with a lot of shit if you're a Packer player,
Hmm.
on top of just the true nature of, I guess, kind of being in that realm of, pre social media, he 60 years old now. He grew up in a time where none of this shit was as public as it was, and trying, you kind of come of age at the tail end of that process.
Right.
Um, and really start kind of figuring your shit out and becoming a superstar as the online world is blooming. So, again, that doesn't excuse the terrible shit,
No.
but it does make an element more of sense when you're kind of saying like, oh, how could he, why is he sending his wiener to, uh, you know, I don't want to say he's sending his, why is he sending his Johnson to a pretty, sideline reporter, but like it's a guy who's like, hey, I can do this now. The internet's here. This is great.
Yeah. What a time to be alive.
Again, and I will say, on a very serious note, the things, and I guess the one thing I kind of got from the documentary that was kind of new, Jen Sturger never physically met him, talked to him.
Hmm.
He got her number from like different Jets employees, and they kind of just promoted it, which I'm kind of glad that that happened there, not here. If it was going to
Hmm.
happen, just I feel like that's really the biggest thing in this was, yeah, he was creepy, but the Jets organization kind of enabled him to be creepy. And then
Yeah.
she gets blackballed from sports and covering sports, um, all that kind of stuff too. And I don't think she deserved that either. But the thing with her is, I don't get from her perspective of, like, I guess you're trying to kind of get your comeuppance on him for kind of ruining your career. But if you're going to tell a story with her as the focus, why not make her the focus if you're Netflix and in Time Films? Because, she's going to notoriously be, the Brett Favre Wiener picture girl. She's not really Jen
Yeah.
Sturger,
Yeah.
and I mean, she made her own way to that point, from being spotted on the Florida State games to the work with the Jets, Deadspin, you name it. Um, and she gets blackballed why not tell her story and make her the focus of it? Don't tie her to Favre again.
Yeah, that's basically what all she gets nowadays is she's tied to that specific event. And it's not fair to her, but that's the reality of it is that's what's going to get the clicks and that's what's going to get the views. And yeah, it's unfortunate, but I don't, in the world of clickbait, everything, that's just kind of how it's going to be.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's just like I said, I think if we're gonna do this from a 2025 lens, let's do this from a 2025 lens. Make it her story, and
Agreed.
make Favre such a little part of it. Don't tie her to this whole thing again, and make that be like your big slam dunk.
Mm-hmm.
Because then again, you're just kind of burying the lead. You're calling it the Fall of Favre, and you're burying the lead and making her a key piece of that again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our noogies of the week. Yeah, not really a Wisconsin web story of the week. A lot of, I guess, serious shit kind of going on in terms of the news stories. Really, nothing I've seen as of late that really stands out news wise. But anyway, Dylan, let's go right into it. We'll start with the Bucks, who, at the time of last recording, either were just finishing the season or had just finished. Either way,
Mm-hmm.
have a little bit of a disappointment. We had mentioned it talking about the WNBA, where Giannis did say today that he does not request a trade currently. So, if you're the Bucks, and truthfully, money is going to be again an issue. You can probably get some smaller deals done,
Mm-hmm.
but with Dame Lillard likely being out for quite some time, what do you really look to do if you're the Bucks where you are right now?
You are, if you're gonna be able to keep Giannis, which it seems like you are, what you're going to you are going to keep the core around him. You're going to keep Damian Lillard. I saw a rumor today that they're talking about, throwing him in some trade packages. And the one that they talked about was for Bradley Beal, I think. The 3-team trade between the Suns and Bucks and someone else. You don't want to get rid of him. You have way too much invested in him. Coming off a big injury like that, his trade value is going to be lower than what you picked him up for. So I think you take the L on that if you try to get rid of him. You have the best player in the world. You want to use his strengths. He's one of the best drivers to the cup that we've ever seen. You can't stop him, even if he's just a one-trick pony. He's not gonna. You can't stop him. He's proven you can't stop him. You can put 3 guys on him and you can't stop him. Right? He's him going to the hole is the closest thing to modern day Shaq that we can see. So you want to surround him with shooters. You want to almost treat him like I almost want to compare him to like a first stint with Cleveland and Miami Heat LeBron, where their team saw success when they surrounded him with shooters because he can drive to the hole whenever he wants to. And defense has 2 options where you can either collapse on him and try to stop him, where then he's just going to kick the ball out to a good shooter and they're going to shoot a 3 and hopefully hit it. Or you stick with shooters and then he goes to the hole and scores. So you want to surround him with shooters. You have an aging Brook Lopez. It sounds like they're going to try to move him this offseason. You hate to see him go. He's been such a good piece. He's a solid defensive anchor still. Not what he once was, but he still makes an impact. But if you can kind of do the Middleton Kuzma deal just a little bit more successful, that'd be great. But I think there is reason to be optimistic. And I know I said that last time too, but yeah, it's frustrating because expectations were so high. With it being their first good season together, but it just didn't pan out in the offseason. You can't blame Damian Lillard for getting hurt. You can throw in the coaching change, you can throw Doc Rivers under the bus all you want, but so yeah.
All fair. All right. So that's the Bucks. Very broad look at it. They had been looking at some of the top prospects where potentially, if the opportunity would have arrived, Giannis had requested trade. You bring in some of these top prospects in the draft who maybe you snag if a trade to San Antonio develops at the 2 spot. But really aside from that, I do agree. I think the Bucks as a whole are in pretty good shape overall. It's a good spot to be in just to have to retool, and figure it out how to retool. What that entails, we'll see, but I like that. Brewers, you had mentioned in our opening part, kind of on the same situation where they have just continuously had just the worst injury luck. And at this point, they're actually just going into rain delay as we record here, but 2 games under 500, a very realistic chance here where they're leading as it's downpouring in Pittsburgh, 5-3. So a very realistic chance to get back within a game of 500. Looked a lot better these last few days here, as opposed to the product last week where they had 4 shutouts in 5 days, where they were shut out 4 times in 5 days. So, the big thing with this club this year is they've had some bad luck with pitching staff health, but they're not the ones striking out though either. So, they had, I think the game Friday night, they had 16 strikeouts as a team out of their 27 outs. So when they lose bad. Yeah. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But I've enjoyed, it's such a different team because you can see the flashes of talent, and they're not getting the production out of guys like Christian Yelich or Jackson Chourio. Those two have both struggled. They're having actually a really good year from guys like Bryce Strang, Sal Frelick. Reese Hoskins is on a big comeback season after last year is his first year back from ACL surgery. He played the full season, but this was his first offseason of truly kind of being back, where he got to just have an offseason, not be in rehab. So there is a lot of positives, and actually I did a piece on this last week for reviewing the Brew, where when you're looking at this team, there's really only 3 true free agents. So there to be sellers at the deadline, even if they are under 500. Where they're actually in a really good shape, where they're 3 free agents. You have Aaron Savali, who's been hurt most of this year. He just made his comeback start tonight after being on the IL since first weekend of the season. Nestor Cortez, who the team acquired in the trade for Devin Williams, and a bullpen pitcher Those are your only true free agents. Everyone else you have under club control in some way, shape, or form. Reese Hoskins, as of right now, yeah, he's going to be entering his age 33 season next year, I believe, or he's in it right now. But he's got a mutual option for $18 million next year. That is going to be a tough one for some other team to want to pick up, and for his sake, let's even if he keeps up the terror that he's on at the plate, that's going to be tough to keep up to try to get a bigger contract for next year. Take your $18 million. Freddie Peralta kind of in that same conversation where he's got a club option for next year, only $8 million next year. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball right now, the unquestioned ace of this franchise right now. But $8 million club option for next year, no brainer. You're bringing that contract back, trying to extend him. Or, if things do go south pretty rapidly here, that is a contract that you can demand a haul from a major contender, because that is a cheap contract for a really good pitcher. Whether or not they do that, time will tell. I am led to believe that they've got this series against Pittsburgh where 4 games set. They should ideally take 3, be back above 500. And then you're heading into a series Memorial Day and early next week where you're going against a Boston team that's kind of in that same boat. Just some bad luck with injuries and just, I would say, underperforming. So definitely, you're definitely not out of this by any means. You're looking at the Central. You're sitting in 4th place in the NL Central. Definitely room to climb your way up. You're only 6 games back right now of the Cubs, which really speaking, you're not actually that far out of things by any stretch. So I guess before I kind of make a distinction on the fate of the season, I'm going to need a few more weeks here. But it's been rough, but it's also been you look at just a snake bitten bad luck, all time bad luck, where you've basically had one consistently healthy starting pitcher.
Right.
So that's Brewer talk for the night. Looking at the Packers before we last recorded, we did do our mock draft. No picks right.
Nope, none.
It happens, but very happy with why we were wrong. The picks, breaking down the Packers picks, they went like this. First round pick, they did keep that pick. They go with receiver Matthew Golden out of Texas. And honestly, if you're not excited about him, I don't know what to tell you. It's our 23rd overall. He's wearing number 22. If you're not excited about what he can bring to this franchise, I mean, it's
on you.
That's on you. I mean, the dude is exciting. He's a legitimate downfield threat. Last year with Texas, he had 10 catches that were air thrown 25 plus yards downfield. Most in the SEC, 6th most in all of college football. That's definitely been a tough area for the Packers to kind of hit, especially without Christian Watson this season for the foreseeable future. 9 touchdowns last season, also was tied for the most in the SEC. Very much figures to be a very prominent receiver in this rookie class. Again, just super exciting. Round 2, you go offensive tackle. Anthony Belton can play all 4 of the 5 spots. So really, Packers do have a formula for offensive linemen. They get big some bitches who can play just about every spot.
Yep.
And with Rasheed Walker and Zach Tom, both your outside tackles playing in contract seasons, and kind of doing that same strategy last year with the Jordan Morgan pick. It's a smart move. The dude's 6'6", 336. He is a big some bitch.
Yes, he is.
But he's also uber athletic. Like I said, he can play guard, he can play tackle, he can move across. And when you've got Josh Jacobs, Marshawn Lloyd, pick your third back between the Chris Brooks and Emmanuel Wilson. Just you've got a wall. Just run.
Yep.
Third round, they go with another receiver who does play. He played a little bit of wildcat quarterback. He played some running back. Savion Williams. And honestly, I think this is going to be the sleeper pick of this draft. This is a guy who, kind of like Christian Watson, did have some consistency concerns with hauling in the ball. But you get him the ball, he holds on to it. He averaged 6.3 yards on 51 carries last season. He's good at taking handoffs. He did not fumble in 199 career touches.
It's impressive.
So when you're looking at that, and I think the thing that stands out for me is when you're watching his tape, go and watch his tape. The dude plays faster than his 40 time, if that makes sense. Where you watch him, he's a lot faster than he tests, and I think that's a really good thing. He's got football speed. He has a knack for being able to high point the football better than a lot of guys that I've seen do that. So very exciting for him. Day 3, your picks, you go Baron Sorrell, the edge rusher out of Texas. Again, versatility, the thing with him. You can play him inside like you kind of can Lucas Van Ness. You can rush him as a pass rusher. The kind of the takeaway here is per ESPN, he had improved his pressure rate every single season that he became a starter. So 2022, 2023, 2024. One of 4 SEC defensive players last year with at least 400 snaps at defensive end and 100 at defensive tackle. Second most bench press reps among defensive ends and edge rushers, so he shows the strength to play inside. There's not a lot to not like there. The dude, and he had a really cool draft moment with being in the green room on day 3. Got to be introduced to his new hometown team. I think he's a very sneaky middle late round guy that you can't help but be excited by. At round 5, they go with another defensive edge rusher, Colin Oliver, out of Oklahoma State. Same kind of situation. He's only 6'4", 240, but can play edge, or he can play off-ball linebacker. When you're playing in a 4-3, either your left outside backer, your right outside backer. Could play special teams. He has a 4.56 40. I mean, that's
not bad for a dude that size.
That's not bad at all. I situational pass rusher. Just say go. You're faster than that guy.
Yeah.
Get there. 6th round, you go Warren Brinson, the defensive tackle out of Georgia. I'm gonna take a look at him here. But really, I mean, so many Georgia Bulldogs on this team already. More beef up front on the defensive line. Can't complain about that.
No, never hurts.
Round 7, you go with Micah Robinson out of Tulane, the cornerback. You watch his tape, he plays a lot better than he kind of his stats maybe entail. Dude is just consistent out at corner. He's got the size to blend in very well. I was a little surprised by this draft that they didn't pick a corner until the 7th round. Especially that, even assuming now that it sounds like the Jair contract is going to be resolved, and not contract, but his whole situation is going to be resolved. He's going to be back for the season yet. I can't say it was a position of strength. Like I said, I was surprised to see them.
Well, we took a corner first round in our mock draft, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that they didn't take one until the 7th, I mean, we're not draft experts by any means.
No.
But It did surprise me a lot too.
And I think that speaks very well of, I think they had a pretty good grasp on the Jair situation and what they are returning
Hmm.
between Carrington Valentine and Keyshawn Nixon and the free agent they brought in, Nate Hobbs. So I don't hate it. I'm skeptical as it stands right now. But, a lot of the issues that they had at corner were because they didn't have Jair out there to play man. So you have to go into zone and you're not getting a pass rush to force those throws early. Zone is only as good as your pass rush is. And you're not
Hmm.
being as aggressive with that because you're settling into a deeper zone. So it was kind of a catch-22 with the Packers defense last year. I get what happened, why it did, but either way. And then the last pick, they go back to offensive line. They go with John Williams out of Cincinnati, not the composer, but the offensive tackle, offensive lineman. Kind of that same thing. Versatile guy, can play tackle. Every game he started this last 2 seasons were at left tackle, but very well could play guard. So yeah, I can't complain about anything the Packers did. I think this puts them in a very good spot to kick off the season this coming fall, which the schedule dropped last week. And I'm looking at the schedule. The only complaint I have with schedule wise is I don't love the early bye week.
I would agree. That's the one thing I was going to say too. Is that it really does suck. That the middle to late bye weeks are always going to be your desirable ones. But
So let me kind of go with that. So as this is breaking down last week. There were, as the schedule kind of gets leaked out, there was really about 2 windows that bye week could have fallen. It would have either been week 5 or week 8. Ends up falling week 8. I think this current season, I would love the week 8 bye, because when you have a younger team like this, having that bye week so early, it can be a good thing.
mhm,
Where if stuff is not quite where it needs to be, you kind of get that extra week of kind of regrouping after a month and being like, hey, we need to do this, this, and this. And you're not really allowing, you're kind of saying, hey, from here on out, it's us versus the world. And if you want another bye week, go earn it for the first round bye in the playoffs.
mhm.
Otherwise, we're playing football every week. I don't hate it from that aspect. Um, I just don't love that it's so early where you don't really have a grasp of things. Last year, if you look at week 5, where the Packers were, they technically were 2-2. You couldn't really complain. Jordan Love had just came back from injury with that where they got. I mean, it ended up being closer than it should have been, but they got boat raced by Minnesota for 3.5 quarters
Mhm.
and end up making it competitive at the end. But as a whole, that game should have been close.
Right.
You survived the injury, you got through it, he came back. If that's where you're taking your bye last season, I'm not too confident about where the season goes from there.
Mhm.
This season, though, if I'm looking at the breakdown of it, week 1 at home against Detroit, first week at home since 2018, the Rogers Percocet game, where he snapped his leg against the Bears, came back. You go short week for week 2 against the NFC runners-up in the Washington Commanders. I would hope, obviously we're way too early to be kind of predicting breakdown. You need one of
Right.
those 2. Ideally both, but you
Absolutely.
need
Yep.
you need one of those 2. Detroit's going to be more gettable with their coordinators being out the building. I'm going to try to re-establish what made them them. Then you go week 3 at Cleveland and week 4 in Dallas. If you're sitting at 3-1 at that point, I'm pretty damn happy.
Agreed. Very
You
much
need to be
agreed.
sitting at 3-1. I guess 2-2 wouldn't be the worst case, but 3-1 is probably what you need to be at. 4-0,
Yep.
obviously fantastic,
Yeah,
but
right.
you need to either be a really good 2-2 or 3-1. Out of the bye, you go at home against Cincinnati. That really could go either way, depending on what Cincinnati team you're getting that day. You go on the road to Arizona, on the road for the Aaron Rodgers revenge game, potentially, against Pittsburgh. Back home against Carolina. Then you get kind of a long week. You get Monday Night Football against the Eagles, on the road against the Giants, at home against the Vikings, Thanksgiving Day against the Lions again. Then mini bye, Chicago at home, Broncos on the road against Chicago, at home for the Ravens, on the road for the Vikings. We knew the opponents. We didn't know exactly what order. I think this is a very winnable schedule. There's a spell in there that back-to-back Vikings and then short week to play Thanksgiving against Detroit that I don't love.
That's going to be a tough one. That's going to be a tough week.
But aside from that, I think you have a pretty good balance of not really being overwhelmed by your schedule.
Mm-hmm.
The only other caveat to that I don't love is having Chicago 2 out of 3 weeks. You go at home, then you go to Denver, then you're back at home on the road against Chicago. I don't love that. I wish that was spaced out a little bit more, but
I would agree.
I can stomach that grand scheme of things.
Yeah, as long as we don't split them again, let's take them both and be done.
Agreed. You know, 1-5 in the division is not going to do you any favors.
No, it's not.
All right. Well, that is a quick look at the schedule, and we'll have plenty more on it as it comes near. I think the 3 preseason games, I know it's Indy, Seattle. Both of those are at home. And I don't recall the other one that's on the road, but all in all, excited for football season.
Yep.
Excited for baseball season. So we wrap up here, Dylan, with what we always do. First of all, we do got to do our sponsorship partnership with Ticket Smarter, and our ticket of the week is it'd be hard to find. Let's go. Ticket of the week is the Breaking Benjamin and Stained concert next 5 days, so the 27th, which would be next Tuesday. At the Rush Center, use code ROOTS10, ROOTS number 10, 10% off every ticket order you do through Ticket Smarter. Dylan, in the next week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whenever we record next, what are you looking forward to?
I'm hoping the Brewers can turn stuff around here. Because I'm doing my best to watch them this year. Still haven't had time to be a diehard fan, but we're getting there. It sucks that the Bucks aren't in the playoffs, but it is kind of nice being able to watch the NBA playoffs without any pressure. You just get to enjoy some basketball. That's if the product is enjoyable in the first place, but being a pressureless spectator is fine. I might do my best to hit up RPW Homecoming 3. So,
well, as of right now, we may have an extra ticket.
We'll may. Talk. Yeah, we'll talk.
All right, for Dylan, who is here, thanks again to Rich for joining us. For Shauna, Sean, Justin, and Ramsey who aren't here, I'm Eric. That was Dylan. We're signing off. Episode 167 is in the books. We're out. See ya.
See ya.